I get it, and I have a lot of friends that are.
Well,
All right. We're live.
All right.
Let's do this.
Dave,
What's up?
super excited to have you on.
good to
We're
be
at,
here.
we're at in Colorado.
I was born in Denver,
Okay.
so I lived in Arvada. Once my dad finished his graduate degree at DU, we moved to Arvada. But most of my family's from Casper, Wyoming area.
I was born in Grand Junction,
Oh,
so not too far.
small world. Yeah,
So,
I'm trying to think. Is that on the way to Casper, Wyoming? Do you go past?
It's
there?
more I think it's more the
Is it-
southwest
okay,
corner.
it's south.
Yeah.
I know I've been through that.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. I think it's old oil town. No, you're not missing
Hey,
anything
everything
special.
in Wyoming and Colorado is, once upon a time, it's either oil or coal.
So, CEO of Mortgage Coach in our industry, one of the leading softwares in the mortgage industry. And Ryan and I have known you since 2010 is when I first saw you at one of our sales rallies. And Ryan and I talk about this a lot, but one thing that I never hear you talk about is how personal development affects what you do, because you are such a driven person when you get up in front of groups or on your YouTube channel or when you're doing your webinars. Your level of focus and drive is very apparent, but we never hear you talk about what gets you there.
Right. Well, obviously there's just an ambition to make a difference, an ambition to be successful. But I think a lot of that is just, different people have different levels of energy. I've interviewed a lot of top producers, and I do think there's just some gifts. I think of Jeremy Forcier. I've interviewed multiple times.
And who's Jeremy Forcier?
It's one of the most, by the way, are you just asking for the interview or you
Yeah.
don't know?
I kind of know, but
I know
for the
who-
people,
I
yeah.
know who it is, but for people that
Yeah,
aren't in the
just
mortgage industry,
Getting the hang of this interview here. So Jeremy is, there's in the mortgage industry, we're all sales animals. We all wake up in the morning going, how can I be more successful? How can I make more money? And then there's some that are just the 1% most successful, and there are some that are the 1% of the 1%. And Jeremy's just one of those guys, that. is
So like
incredible.
top 100 in the country.
Top 100 in the country. And, but, what even distinguishes him, and the reason I bring him up in the context of this question, is his energy. He's just got this X factor that you're around him, and there's a personal energy that he has. And so to answer your question as it pertains to me is, I've always had a natural energy. I was that little kid when you grew up that woke up at the crack of dawn or beforehand, had a lot of energy. Going through school, they called it ADD.
Yeah.
So I had an excessive amount of energy. So I've got that going for me.
So
Which
how many hours a night do you sleep?
is 7-ish.
Okay. So you're not one of these crazy people that's like Jocko that sleeps 4
No,
hours.
I'm not a 4-hour
yeah,
night guy.
Jocko says he goes to bed about 10:30
Yeah.
and wakes up at 4:30.
Yeah, well, I actually have tried that before because I also am like, we all have these principles that we live by, and one of mine is just, no one's ever going to outwork me. May not be the smartest, I do have some gifts, ADD, dyslexia, not the best speller, but I'm not going to be outworked. And Josh Metal, I don't know if you know Josh, but
No.
he's another, Jeremy Forcier type guy, $200 million a year plus producer. And I heard that he was getting up at like 2 or 3 in the morning. He gets coached by Bill Hart. And I just heard about his work ethic, and I'm like, there's someone getting up earlier than me, And so I naturally wake up between 4 and 5. But when I heard this guy's getting up earlier than that and getting after it more than I am, I'm like, I'm going to give that a try. And that did not work. I need my 7 hours of sleep.
Gotcha.
So anyway, natural energy going for me, a commitment to give it my all and work hard. And then, the why has shifted. I'm 53 now, and my why in my 20s was a better car.
Mm-hmm.
My why in my 30s was a better house. My why in my 40s was my kids. And, here I am in 50s with Mortgage Coach, and you really start looking at like significance,
Making a difference.
making a difference. And I do think Mortgage Coach, coming out of the meltdown, I don't know if you guys remember the meltdown.
Yeah.
Of course.
Kidding,
We were there.
facetiously. But that really was a big shift in my why, because I had to cut the company down 3 different times from the size that it was. And Simon Sinek, what do you call it, TED Talk, totally shifted my why. And so today my why is creating a product in a community of mortgage professionals that change the way people get into mortgage debt. So that when people are getting into mortgage debt, they really understand their options and they make better decisions.
So when you said significance, are you talking about what the story you're leaving behind, the impact you're having, and kind of your legacy is kind of a new focus now that you're in your 50s compared to when you were younger?
I don't know if it just has to do with age, but just, clarity. I mean, Mortgage Coach is a much bigger company. So we've got, thousands of loan officers that use our product. We're on pace to be touching millions of families every year around the mortgage. So, and the goal is north of 2 million, so like call it the Mortgage Coach BHAG. My business why is 2 million families a year are getting a total cost analysis from a Mortgage Coach loan officer, and they are financially better off as a result. And we've really, at that point, I think we'll have reinvented a little part of the mortgage business.
Yeah, for sure. So, CEO of Mortgage Coach, when did Mortgage Coach start?
Well, this year is our 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
So
I didn't know it had been there that long.
yeah, that
That's
long.
awesome.
Yeah. So do the math on that. 97. Although I started thinking about Mortgage Coach and really working on Mortgage Coach in 96.
So was the term startup, was that a popular term?
No, I mean,
Yeah,
at that time I was a very, I think I was outside. I had a year where I had done over 50 million a year in production as an originator.
So you were originating before you did Mortgage Coach?
Yeah, I was a top loan officer. So I think my best year was 296 loans.
Wow.
I actually wrote a little book called The Art of Referral, which is how I started Mortgage Coach.
I didn't know
you
that.
didn't know that?
Did you know that, Ryan?
You guys got to read my little
The Art
book,
of Referral?
The Art of Referral.
Is it on Amazon?
It's not that kind of book. If you go to my LinkedIn page, I wrote 2 books, one pre-meltdown called The Mortgage Planner Handbook. But really, The Art of Referral, when I first wrote it, was one to tell my story as an originator, but also use it to help sell Mortgage Coach.
Sure.
So, do you want the backstory on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go down, there's a little area where you kind of have digital download books. So I was a top loan officer. Now, what made me unique was I got all my business through CPAs and financial planners. I didn't like realtors. And through searching my value proposition, I went from do business with me and you'll save a half a point. Do business with, I came up with all these value props, but I landed on this value prop that my advice made a difference, and I needed to make that visual, hence the total cost analysis.
Sure.
So when the first generation of total cost analysis was an Excel spreadsheet, and then I was asked to speak. You guys know Todd Duncan and Sales Mastery?
Yeah.
We've heard of them.
Yeah, I said that facetiously.
So
yeah, there it is.
So
Art of
anybody
Referral.
can download this.
Yeah, but there it is right there. 152 loans for 962 in commissions. Yeah, big year.
That's awesome.
Big year. And that was a team. I had a processor and one assistant, and I did that. And that same year, I also went from kind of the Savage team to a branch of about 10 loan officers.
So is this Art of Referrals, if I wasn't in the mortgage industry, would there be value?
Yeah, well, I think it's mainly the mortgage industry, but there's probably some takeaways for any industry. But I mean, it was how an originator said, I want to get business from CPAs and financial planners as my primary referral source. This is how I did it. And here are the practices that I use to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm all over it.
Yeah. So anyway, so getting to the first start of Mortgage Coach. So when I was going from like the Savage team and a branch, and I wanted to build a big mortgage company, I had developed this total cost process that was just this better way to interview a family, a better way to differentiate yourself with referral partners. But it wasn't something that average loan officers would do. I had figured out how to do it with my Excel spreadsheet, my HP12C, and my ADD gift of doing 3 things at once. But I wanted something that I could take, average loan officers and turn them into awesome loan officers and good loan officers to another level. And so I approached my partner, Greg Wexler, became partner of Mortgage Coach, and said, hey, will you turn this into a software program for my mortgage company. There was no,
So at this time, your focus on this was just in your company.
I wanted to, go to 100 loan officers. I wanted to execute better. I wanted to improve this process. And I think Greg said I could do that for 20 grand. And we were friends. I could go on a whole story about who Greg Wexler is, but really, did you have something you want to say?
No?
Okay. So about halfway into it, he's like, and I'm, coming up, oh, it needs to do this, it needs to do that, it needs to do that. And he's like, I hate to tell you, it's going to be like 100 grand.
Wow.
And it's going to take like, remember, we're talking back, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There's no cloud, people that could create software like Mortgage Coach were like, that was rocket science.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like,
It's all code.
yeah, it was like magic, and so I'm like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Well, give me a week on that. But I'm going to do this thing. Well, at that same time, Todd Duncan had asked me the year before I was on a panel at Sales Mastery, and he said, I'd like you to do a keynote and really tell your story, walk everybody through your process. And I'm like, and I'm going to sell a product from stage. Now, by the way,
Sure.
back in these days, there's no Tim Brahim, there's no Barry Habib. There's
Yeah.
never been a loan officer that I had ever seen sell from stage, but I'm just like, I want this product. It's great for the industry. I know it fills a gap. And I'm like, Greg, handshake on this. I go, we're going to make a business out of this. And I'm going to pay you 100 grand, whether I have to pay it out of my personal pocket, or I think we could create a product out of this and we could sell it. So we named the company called Wow Tools.
Okay.
So by the way, people don't know this, but the name of the company is not Mortgage Coach. It's Wow Tools.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's, that is our, Mortgage Coach is a DBA to Wow Tools. And the whole concept of Wow Tools was that we would create a tool that would wow people, like
Yeah.
wow
Yeah.
them within a minute, which was,
The aha.
Mortgage Coach was the first wow tool. And then we thought we were going to create all kinds of wow tools. Of course, we figured out how hard it is to start companies. So there, it became Mortgage Coach. Anyways, cutting to the story, I told my story from stage. I said, I've got Mortgage Coach. We'd come up, by that time, Wow Tools was a DBA. We decided to call it Mortgage Coach. And I sold 108 Mortgage Coaches for $995 a pop.
Wow.
I was like walking off the stage, and it was just like my wife, Greg's wife, a friend of mine from high school came to work our booth, and we started Mortgage Coach with $108,000 from our first 108 sales.
And were you expecting that kind of return?
Wow.
Because at that time, how many people attended Sales Mastery?
It was a lot. It was over 1,000. It wasn't 2,000, but I don't know. I mean, ask Todd in 1997 how many were at Sales Mastery, but it was a lot. Obviously, I worked a lot of off hours. I did a partnership. I spent a lot of time. I thought it would be successful. I don't remember what our goal was. It was probably 50. I don't think I thought I would sell over 100. But I thought it would be successful.
So let's take a time out for just a second. And we talked briefly about call reluctance and fear of failing and inaction. Did you experience any of that when you were at this point, or were you just like full steam ahead? I'm not too worried about anything happening, or not too scared about.
I was born to be an entrepreneur. I was born to have a work ethic. I was born with a lot of energy. And have I ever had fear? Yes. But fear is just never something that has held me back. Dating back to grade school, high school, my last name is Savage.
Sure.
And I lived up to that. No, fear just never, if anything, that to me, I'm afraid, I'm going to do that. There's even if we get to it, there's a whole story about, my first time public speaking, which,
Tell it. Let's do it.
Yeah, you want to say what?
Yeah.
So kind of going back, first of all, there's no one that's been more scared of speaking in public than me. In college, I took a public speaking course because it was, I can't remember, I think I had an option of something else, but it wasn't a good option. And I had heard that I didn't have to speak in public to do this public speaking course. The teacher, the professor says, at the end of the class, you're going to have to, give your report to everybody. And if you don't, you lose a grade. And in my head, I'm like, well, I better be getting an A because I want the B. I'm not speaking in public. I'll do the class. I knew that speaking in public was a good thing to have influence and be a leader. And I wanted to have influence and be a leader. But I really, I was going to get a B. And it got down where I was getting an A. I had developed a little bit of rapport with the teacher and got to the point where, what day do you want to speak? And I'm like, I can't remember his name, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm just, after class, very humbly, I'm sorry, I am just, I'm not ready, maybe next year. And anyways, he was a really important mentor. I should remember his name, go back and look it up, because he spent probably a half an hour with me and walked me through a subject matter that I would be comfortable with, which at that time I was a ski tech at a sporting goods store. So I was a Solomon certified ski tech, and he's like,
Talk about it.
talk about, how you became a certified ski tech and why you did that. And I'm like, I can do that. I'm pretty, that's my wheelhouse. And so I got an A in the class. So
Wow.
that was my first time public speaking.
And you survived.
And I survived. But my first mortgage gig, again, I always was very comfortable, no fear cold calling, no fear going out and meeting with a CPA. I always had fear with realtors still. I don't know why. I married a realtor. But I had less fear going into a, top attorney and a CPA than, realtors, but that's a whole nother story. Probably worth talking about since you have a mortgage following. But it was CAM, California Association of Mortgage Brokers at the time. So bankers, it was a broker's world. And I spoke in Woodland Hills. Bill Hillstad, if anybody hears this name, he became Tim Brahim's partner. Bill Hillstad and I shared a stage together where I think I spoke first and he spoke after me. But all I can say is I went to this, I was asked to speak because by this time I had Mortgage Coach. I had spoken at Sales Mastery. I was known as a top producer that had a really unique way of doing things. And at this point I kind of wanted to start, speaking to some Mortgage Coach. And all I can say is I drove up there with my wife, and I was sick. I couldn't eat the meal. And there were multiple times where I'm like, I just want to tell them I'm sick and I can't do it. I was just, it was the most terrifying thing. I honestly can't think of anything that has scared me more.
Really?
And I don't think I was very good, but I got up on stage, and it was like a surreal experience. It was just like this weirdest experience where I could just hear myself talk. I was rambling, I had cotton mouth, but I got through it. And for some reason, someone asked me to speak again, so it couldn't have been too bad.
Yeah.
But it was terrifying.
And did that wear off the more you spoke?
It did. It wore off. Every time it dissipated to where, I don't want to come across like speaking in public's no big deal, because I still I'm humbled, I'm getting ready to speak in front of a bunch of folks. But I don't have any fears like, oh, I'm not going to know what to say, or I'm going to trip, or that first time, I was worried about tripping. I was worried about, being tongue-tied and not speaking. I was worried about forgetting my subject matter. I was worried about 100 things, and now I just concentrate on 2 or 3 things,
Well, and when I hear you speak, you never seem nervous, but it's not like I'm listening to a speaker. It's like I'm talking to you now.
Right.
You definitely have that real vibe about you when you're speaking.
Right.
Which I've tried to copy. Is everything okay, Ryan?
This camera has frozen for some reason.
That's okay. Nobody wants to look at me, anyways. You can try turning it off and on, or pressing the mode button if you want. One thing about running a live show, but yeah, it's when we hear you speak, it's definitely real. And when you're selling us a product, I think that goes a long ways. Whenever I think of Mortgage Coach, I think of Dave Savage. I'm never worried about who's behind the scenes, or it's very real to me.
Well, I think that's I don't want to call it a gift, but it's intentional. I am not I'm not going to say their names. There are speakers in our industry that are household names that are just so polished. They rehearse what they're going to say. They script what they're going to say. And, that's the other thing is I don't see myself as a speaker. I am an innovator, and a businessman. You know, so I mean, I like to be on the cutting edge. You know, I've got the new Apple Buds.
Oh, I saw you
or-
walk in with those.
Yeah, I got so innovation, new innovation, I got it. You know, Mortgage Coach, when we invented it, was on the bleeding edge. You know, now it's innovative. But I'm a businessman, but I speak to have a broader influence, you know, and so I don't rehearse, I don't practice. I mean, I do have a process, so I'm intentional around an opening, some strategies, what's to close and call to action. But I mean, most of the speakers in the mortgage industry are very intentional. I mean, they, to the point where they might even be rehearsed. Well, many of them are rehearsed.
Well, yeah, I
That's not
mean,
me.
I've watched some of them on stage, and then I've seen videos, and it's the same presentation, which there's nothing wrong with.
No,
Yeah, it's-
that
yeah.
by the way, that's how you get mind-bogglingly good at something.
Yeah, well, that's how comedians do it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
They-
not like it's the first time they're winging it, you know. Although there are some comedians that, you know, are pretty mind-blowing with how they wing it. But yeah.
They're witty, quick-witted.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is they have a script they're following,
yeah,
and then somebody might throw something at him from the audience, and he's got to be able to leave his script, be witty with that person, then go right back into his script, right? Without it being obvious.
I don't know how they do it. I respect the heck out of those guys and gals.
So, got comfortable with public speaking, was really doing well with selling at live events. How did you go? I'm sure Mortgage Coach got to a certain point, but what was your aha moment where you decided to make educating and training loan officers a big part of Mortgage Coach? Because if you go to YouTube and you type in Mortgage Coach, there are hundreds of training videos and interviews and motivational stuff on there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when did you decide to make that part of your business plan?
So, well, first of all, I mean, I've done over 800 interviews now. So a lot,
It's incredible.
a lot.
801, right? Because I think I was on yesterday.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. I mean, actually, it's probably in the thousands if you include interviews like that. Well, it's not probably, it is.
Yeah.
That's like my Tuesday interview, you know, where I prepped, I was intentional, you know, when you throw in Skype interviews and things like that, I mean, it's thousands. Those are like formal interviews. So, God, when did I mean, first of all, I've always, you know, kind of believed that I'm a leader and leaders are learners. And I do have a busy mind, so like my downtime for me is reading, you know, whether it's blogs, whether it's podcasts, you know, I mean, that's both entertainment and it's what fuels everything about me. So I've always been a reader, a studier, and kept pretty busy. But I would say the big pivot, like when you go to YouTube today and you Google myself or you Google Mortgage Coach, that was coming out of the meltdown, you know? And I would say some of it came from pain. You know, I learned who used Mortgage Coach, you know, because between people leaving the business and people like, I don't use Mortgage Coach, I'm not paying anymore. We learned who used Mortgage Coach. And I think I had I had a lot of clarifying moments through the meltdown. But one thing became clear is that the product that we create is a product that's educational, that helps a loan officer be a better coach, teacher, and advisor to a family. So I mean, I'm like selling software and technology that's basically powering educational experiences. And then the other thing that became clear is that like my biggest obstacle to success was turning loan officers into teachers, mentors. It's like I had to get them to think differently. Don't be a transactional rate quoter. Be a advisor. Ask some good questions. So I mean, I really realized that I needed to change the way loan officers think and to broaden how they see themselves. And that was my biggest opportunity to grow Mortgage Coach, was turn loan officers into advisors. And so that was part of it. I was a teacher. And then I also kind of got to the point where I was once upon a time a top loan officer. And my story sold the first several thousand mortgage coaches. But then Tim Brahim's story sold a lot of mortgage coaches. Barry Habib, Todd Duncan, Stephen Marshall,
Yeah.
you know, Jim McMahon. I mean, it was like, you know, these personalities would use Mortgage Coach, I would tell their story and that would sell Mortgage Coach. So I'm like, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. I also realized that like my role as CEO of Mortgage Coach, yeah, it's to, lead strategy, bring great people into the business, have a culture that lets people do great things, but it's also staying close to the loan officer, staying close to the street. And so I decided to make that commitment, coming out of the meltdown, coming out of the pain, say, you know what? I'm going to do an interview every Tuesday at 9 o'clock Pacific, live. Because remember, I'm the no trans, like you guys, you're running this, whether things break down. And people thought I was crazy. Like, you're going to do a live interview.
Yeah.
You don't know what people are going to say. You don't know what's going to happen. You're going to commit to doing this every single Tuesday at 9 o'clock. I mean, I'm a pretty busy guy. And, that's a big commitment. I mean, I miss 3 weeks out of the year for.
That's amazing.
And by the way, I might miss 4 or 5. I don't count, but I don't miss a lot.
See, we haven't committed to a schedule. You never know when this podcast is going to pop
So,
on YouTube.
9 o'clock Pacific for going on my 8th year.
Jeez.
I have
that's
done
awesome.
an interview.
And they've all been on YouTube?
I think there's hundreds, but I don't know exactly how many.
Because that was right when YouTube was getting big, was around
yeah, but
2000.
no. Well, first of all, we've changed platforms. We use GoToWebinar now, but I mean, in the early days, I don't know how many hundreds are on YouTube. I don't know how many are there. And though there were many years where we didn't record them and save them and post them, but it's interesting. We should look and see how many Tuesday interviews are on YouTube. Feel free to pull up Mortgage Coach, go to the Tuesday interview, and see how many are in there. But anyway, so I decided to make that commitment. I've stuck with it, and I think it helps turn average loan officers into trusted advisors. I think it helps people understand how to use Mortgage Coach more strategically. And then, of course, I interviewed Simon Sinek. I've interviewed all kinds of great people. And I get to take their, what makes them awesome and align that with Mortgage Coach. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
It's huge. And for people that are starting a company or maybe people that have established companies, one of the coolest things I like about your company is I know the CEO's name is Dave. I know him and I watch him on YouTube and I run into him at events, and if I need to, I can call and get a hold of him. We use a dozen different softwares in mortgage originating, everything from our LOS to everything. And I don't know anybody's CEO's name,
You're it.
let alone just first name Dave. I can get him on the phone if I want to. So, I mean, I think it's
By the
really
way,
easy when you
everybody
get to
can't
a-
get me on the phone. I mean, we got kind of a unique relationship.
you got to be special, I guess.
No,
But-
I'm kidding. I do. I'm close to our customers.
But the fact that we know who you are, right? And I think that gets lost when a company gets to a certain size.
It does. It does. Although, when you really look at some of the biggest companies, there's, it's just like when you go to a restaurant. You go to a restaurant and you go, someone loves this place. Someone's in love with this restaurant. You go to some companies and you're like, you know what? Someone's in love with this company. I mean, there's a name behind Apple. There's a name behind Microsoft once upon a time. You look at most of the most successful companies, someone was in love with that company. Someone gave everything to that company. And the companies, and I'm not saying if there's a CEO or a leader and you can't associate their name to it, that there's not someone that loves that company. Because they're just people that, they're either introverts or they just have different personalities. But I would say that most of the companies that I respect the most, there's a personality that the customers know. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And even in originating, that can get lost.
It can get lost in anything. I mean, when you lose sight of your customer, because your customer is king. And there's a whole nother rift. We can maybe get to it, but when you look like in the mortgage industry, there's a lot of politics, and especially when you get, the speaking circuit,
Yeah.
and who's aligning with each other, and we're not going to get into names and personalities, but there's a lack of alignment sometimes where it's like, why can't we just be friends?
Mm-hmm.
And people often call me Switzerland, like, Dave, how do you do it? It's like all the coaches, you know what? Because I always just remember who my customer is. Number one, it's the millions of families that I want to
Help.
change the way things are done. And two, it's the loan officers that use our product to pay us money. And they don't care about anything. You know, they don't care about who's friends, who's speaking at whose event, and they just want to, you know, have a good educational experience. So if you just keep an eye on who your customer is, it all works out.
So, one thing that Ryan and I are realizing is really important to this, and this is just a hobby for us, right? This is something fun to do, to sit down with people we like to sit down with, is one thing that's impressive is your network of people, right? That you've already mentioned a bunch of names that you've had on, that you've interviewed, that you're on stage with. How did you get to that point? Obviously, you had a good springboard with your success in originating, but it seems like that's always growing, and you're always a good person to know if you want to help, if you need help getting connected with other people, right?
I like to think so. I mean, your social network of both friends and business relationships is, you know, it's everything, you know. So, I mean, Darren Hardy, who's a good friend of mine, wrote a book called.
He's the publisher of Success Magazine.
Yeah,
Really-
he was.
Yeah.
He stepped down a few years ago to focus on his own publishing empire that he's creating. But I mean, you know, when you interview Darren, he always talks about the tortoise and the hare. And so, I mean, part of, you know, when I look at the network of Mortgage Coach and then the network of people that I've interviewed and people that I think I have genuine friendships with, I mean, it's just lots of base hits, lots of bunts, lots of base hits, hopefully not broken relationships. I mean, I like to pride myself on the fact that, you know, I don't lose relationships. You know, I just try to always do what's right for my customer, for my team, for my family, and it seems to work out. But it's just lots of base hits. And then I do think, you know, like where I'm at today, you know, like when I mentioned Simon Sinek and Dave Ramsey and Darren Hardy and Jocko Willink and, you know, really folks that are household names.
Yeah.
You know, they're like celebrity status. I mean, I really don't give myself much credit for that because at this point now, Mortgage Coach is so much bigger than me. You know, it's 34% of the top 1% most. If you look at the most successful 1% of the mortgage industry, 34% of them use Mortgage Coach. You know, and so now I really am, you know, an ambassador of a very big community that like when I got Simon Sinek, I mean, he didn't do it for the money because we don't have a budget. And despite the fact that he charges, I think, $70,000, $80,000 to do a speech, I mean, I got Simon to do it because I told his team my story. I told him who we are, and he's like, that sounds like a cool place to be. So now, I mean, the only credit I think I get is that I'm still at it.
Yeah.
I haven't quit. I think the best days are yet to come. I have an awesome community. And when I decide I want someone on my show, you know, I'm not afraid to call. You know, I'm not afraid to go after it a little bit and chase a great guest.
Well, that's awesome. So, whole lot of going on with work and running the Mortgage Coach and doing all the education and speaking and seminars. One thing that's been a hot topic, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record because I feel in every episode we talk about this, but I have an issue with this trendy work-life balance term that's been thrown around the last few years at a lot of these seminars. Is almost a guilt if you work too much versus your personal life, you know, work-life balance. What's your definition of work-life balance with what you do and how 110% all day? How do you manage that? And do you have a boundary? And I mean, what is that like for you?
Well, the boundary's always moving. I mean, you know, I use this term, I mean, balance is bullshit. You know, I mean, it's
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I only, what's that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, and I say that not to say that we shouldn't always strive for balance, but it's always changing. Like, you know, what is balance this month for me? It's not the same. I mean, I'm gonna do a lot of personal things this month, you know, but you know, it's always shifting, you know. So I don't know. And I also want to be careful because I do believe I'm probably not, like if you said, let's talk to Dave Savage about life balance, probably not the best guy because by my wife's definition, I'm a workaholic. You know, by my definition, I probably am. But do I do amazing adventures with my wife and kids? And I mean, on the way over here, my son said, Dad, you want to go do lunch? We're in Portland. I'm like,
Sure.
I'm going to be late.
Yeah.
And,
You
and
know.
I loved that.
You
when,
know.
when Cody said he's going to be a few minutes late, he's with his family. I was like, that's awesome. I was completely 100% good with it. I loved it.
Yeah, but am I going to overwork today? By some people's standards. So I just think it's a personal thing. I mean, I love growing Mortgage Coach. I love relationships. So it's hard for me to distinguish what's fun, what's work, and what's personal. And I think it's also really personal. It's between you and your wife. It's between you and your kids. And by the way, it's how do you feel when you go to sleep at night? Do you have guilt? And so balance, I think, is and when you love what you do, like I do, and you really throw a lot at it. I mean, there's been times where I'm like, I'm out of balance, and I have guilt, and I make adjustments.
But do you think that the success you have with Mortgage Coach in your business, do you think that affects your happiness in your personal life?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it's just such a tough thing. I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss. So, you guys familiar with
I know the name.
Tim Ferriss? He's got a book out right now called Tools of Titans. I mean, must get. By the way, his podcast is awesome.
Tools of Titans?
I don't want to plug other.
You can plug
podcasts.
whatever you want here.
Yeah,
He was just on, well, not just, but he was on Jocko's podcast.
and Jocko's been on his podcast.
I get his weekly emails and whatnot.
So I would say listening to his first interview of Jocko is one of my all-time.
When he talked about like his depression and suicidal stuff.
No. When Tim has I think it might be one of the top podcast.
Yeah,
books.
it's big.
But when he interviewed Jocko,
Oh,
when
when
he had Jocko
gotcha.
on his podcast,
Okay.
that was a really good one. But anyways, getting to him, he wrote a book called The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yep.
So
Oh, I know who you're talking about now.
yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
he makes a really good case, and some people can do that. Like one of my best friends, what balance is to me and what balance is to him are like vastly different. I mean, like he looks at me and he's just like, Savage, you're crazy. Like, dude, let's come out and hang out for the weekend at the winery with me. He's got in the Anderson Valley in Northern California, and I'm just like, bro, I'm having fun. That's fun for me. If he's not golfing or doing different things. So I mean, balance is just it's up to different people. And I don't think, I also follow Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, and he talks a lot about balance. I mean, he's like,
And what's his take?
oh, you just to be successful, you got to work your ass off.
Well,
Period. And he uses the F-bomb, and he makes the case 5 ways to Sunday, but he's like, it takes work. It takes sacrifice. It takes lack of balance to
So-
get to a certain level of success.
the sacrifice part. So on one of the Success Magazine CDs, they come with the little audio CDs you can throw in your car. Mr. Wonderful is being interviewed from Shark Tank. Timothy O'Leary.
Yeah,
Sounds
O'Leary.
about right.
And they asked him that question of work-life balance. And he said, before you attack a big goal or start a business or whatever you want to do, you need to identify what you're willing to sacrifice up front. And for example, I'm not going to make it to all my kids' soccer games, but in return, I'm going to have this, right? Is that something that you're conscious of knowing what you're going to sacrifice?
No, I'm not. But I don't miss my kids' sports events. So I mean, that's I was a lacrosse coach. My kids were Cub Scouts. I was a Cub Scout leader. I missed one lacrosse game this high school season, and that was just because I had a scheduling screw up. I didn't realize I had the game on the wrong date. So I'm not, no, I'm not. That's not my story. But no, I like to work. I like what I do, and I do it a lot. And when there's something else that is like family thing that I can be doing, I'm doing that. But that's the other thing. I mean, that is, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and intentionality around balance, I don't think is something I can be. I'm not the building champions guy. Daniel Harkavy, Coach Bill Hart, those guys can talk about that in a much better way than I can, because I'm just flowing in and out and doing my best.
So you just brought up coaching. Do you Do you have a coach or?
I don't have a coach today, and haven't for about 2 or 3 years, but I don't know if that's a good decision. Maybe I should. I've had some of the most important mentors and leaders of my life were professional coaches. You know, so I've had out of the past 20 years, I've had at least 7 years that I've had a professional coach, and all but one of those years I would say was absolutely the right decision. And the 1 year that it wasn't, I don't blame the coach, but he wanted me to do things. Well, him and I agreed to a strategy that wasn't right for me, and so I was trying to be someone who I wasn't. And it was actually a year where, you know, I had built this mortgage practice on CPAs and financial planners and past customers, and the refi market was going away, and the purchase money was where it was at. And so we agreed to a business plan that put 80% of my time going after realtors. I don't like
But
realtors.
you don't, yeah.
You know, I mean, no, I learned to, but it's still, I should have been more playing in my sweet zone and then having the right amount of realtors. I should have just put more.
And did you have history with this coach before that year, or was that the first year?
No, but he was my coach for a few years. He's still I still consider him a good personal friend, a coach that I would refer people to, a coach that I would use under certain circumstances. Again, it's just, I bring that up because I always think it's important that we just, we got to be our authentic self to be our authentic best. You know, and so.
Say that again.
I like that one.
I just made it up. Anyways, you got to be your authentic self to be, I don't know what I say.
Your authentic best.
Your authentic best, okay.
Now you're going to listen back to the podcast.
In quotes.
Yeah,
Dave
right,
Savage.
Right. So, at least for me, you know, I mean, maybe not for everybody, but
I just started coaching for the first time this year, doing
it's an awesome.
the high trust coaching with Todd
Oh,
Duncan.
with Todd, right on.
They nailed it as far as match. I can't speak for everybody, but as far as matching me with my coach, there was. Have you seen his material?
Oh yeah, no, Todd is.
But have you seen the coaching, like the stuff you fill out?
I don't know what. So the coaching form.
Yeah, once you
Yes,
sign up,
I have seen it.
Yeah, it's like there's 4 different ones, and they're each anywhere from 1 to 5 pages of questions.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple hours to go through it all. So then I turned that in, and then they sat down with their panel of coaches and matched everybody up, and then I had a 2-hour call with my coach. And my first impressions, do you remember this? I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I'm going to get along with this guy. I just have a feeling. It went well, but very enthusiastic guys, and so am I, but I was just a little worried about it. But after a couple calls and structuring my business plan, what an awesome job they did matching me up with Brian Fraser's my coach.
Oh, Brian Fraser.
You know,
He's a mortgage coach.
He's a stud.
Dude, Brian's a major stud.
And people have been asking me, I get calls once in a while, what do you think of high trust coaching? And it's not really coaching as much as it is having a consultant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and also just an accountability partner. You know, having someone like Brian Fraser. You know, you've got someone that's one of the most elite, successful people in our space, who you're paying to hold you accountable and to make sure you're best, and be a sounding partner. Is that a bad thing?
No,
Makes sense to me.
uh,
By the way, I'm just multitasking because I want to.
go ahead.
I was going to see, because I know Brian is he's a major mortgage coach stud. I just wanted to see something. We keep talking.
Accountability. So I love asking this question. Do you require an accountability partner? Like, do you have, obviously you've had mentors and you've had coaches, but do you have somebody either in or out of your industry that you talk to on a regular basis and kind of hold
Not,
each other
not
accountable?
enough right now. That's where I said not always. So, I mean, obviously I have my wife. So
Well, that's a great
I've got an
accountability partner.
accountability partner. I have my kids, and I have business partners, you know. So, I have accountability partners, but I don't have a coach currently. And, you know, I just don't know why I don't, but I just don't feel the need. And I just felt like I said, I've had a coach for years, and every time I've brought in a coach, I had like specific goals that I wanted to achieve as a result of that coaching. And I had clarity on either skills or habits I needed to create to get there that were different than what I had. Or, and so I was like, you know, and I had a 1 or 2 year vision around it. And I just don't I'm really having fun right now. I mean, I'm like in a really good space professionally, personally. I mean, maybe if I did have a coach, like I don't want a life balance coach because I also feel like I'm at a point with mortgage coach where it's like the salmon are running.
Yeah.
We got to get them, you know, so I don't have time for that. But to achieve the business goals I have, I don't think a personal coach would be the right move for me right
Well, and I'm going to come back and say something in just a second, Ryan, but I have both, right? So I have my coach, but then I have another loan officer outside of our company that we have a weekly call with, and we just check
Accountability
in.
partner.
Yeah, an accountability partner. And it started off with, I want to work out 3 days a week. I want to make this many phone calls. I want to show up at this time of work. To now it's just a conversation where we know each other's business on a very intimate level and kind of can ask the right questions and know where we're going and knowing what goals we have. But I asked this accountability question to Doug Mendenhall, and who was our first guest. And then I asked it with Roger Wendell, who owns this museum that we're at today. And they both had the same answer, is they don't really need an accountability partner because they're self-accountable. That they don't feel they don't feel that they need somebody to hold them accountable because just like you said, you're born with a natural sense of energy, right? A natural amount of energy or high energy. They're kind of born with a self-accountability.
Yeah, see, I don't. First of all, that's them, so that's fine for them. I mean, I think everybody at different times having accountability partners, right? And I will have different coaches again over the course of my life. So I don't think, oh, I don't need an accountability partner. I mean, there's lots of things that I should do that I don't do, and having a coach and accountability partner, I just don't have that burning desire and don't know exactly who I'd bring in to fill in the gaps right now. But I'm a big believer in coaching. And especially when it comes to loan officers and people that are mortgage professionals, I mean, there's not a lot of the best and people that are being their best that I interview them, and they either don't have a coach right now. I would say that the majority of them do. And if they don't, it's like, okay, I'm in between years. You know, it's like not this year, but I did last year. And, you know, I mean, coaching has really proven out for both realtors and mortgage professionals to be if not a requirement, something very important to go into the next level.
Well, I think outside of our industry too, it's interesting when I'm talking to people that aren't in our industry and we talk about coaching. A lot of people don't even understand that you can hire a coach,
Oh, yeah.
right? Not within our industry, but outside your industry.
No,
So-
a lot of big companies, you know, you named the big companies, they've got formal coaching programs. In-N-Out has a coaching program and mentor.
In and
You
out
know.
the hamburger joint.
Yeah, you know. The In-N-Out is a really neat company. I had the opportunity to sit next to the number 2 guy there. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's the COO, and on a 2 or 3 hour flight. And, you know, I mean, I asked him, hey, what are your big goals for the year? And it was, all of them were tied to investing in their people,
Wow.
coaching and mentoring and developing servant leadership. In an Burger.
That's crazy.
You know,
and
what
it's
you
true
can
if he's sharing
learn-
it with somebody on a plane. It's not like he's being
Oh, yeah. No, I learned I mean, I literally took notes. Like, I could go to my Evernotes right now, find that conversation. I mean, it was something that I journal on afterwards, and I had 3 takeaways 2 that I'll never forget.
Can you share 'em?
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Yeah, no, I won't forget. I'll try to do them quickly because, I mean, it really is a long story. So I you know, first of all, I can't remember how long it was until I realized, you know, this guy's the number 2 guy in and out. But from the time he got on, he just had this like X factor, almost like he was like a professional athlete, kind of X factor. And he was watching something on his iPad and laughing, like giggling, like almost, it was like getting annoyed. It was like, okay, you know, professional athlete guy, giggling. I mean, you know, he just struck you. I mean, to a point, it's like, I hope he doesn't do this the whole time. You know, so first of all, just laying the stage of who this guy was. And then I can't, you know, and usually I'm on flights and I'm so busy because I travel a lot that I won't even always engage with people. You know, I won't like, hey, what do you do? But for whatever reason, I was just like, what's up? So I was the one kind of bringing the conversation to him. And anyways, so I found out within a half an hour who he was. I had internet, so I Googled him. You know, and I can't remember the sequence of everything, but I'll go through the kind of like the breadcrumbs of some things I'll never forget. And I asked him the question. He talked about coaching. He talked about leadership. He used the word servant leadership in his own language multiple times. And I asked him the question of what percentage of the population do you think, have the potential to be servant leaders? And his answer was like 20, 30%. I can't remember what it was, but it was not 50% or more.
Okay.
So I thought, that's interesting. And then I can't remember all the twists and turns of the conversation, but I asked him, and he had made the point that we hire servant leaders. Like when they're interviewing people, they are looking for servant leaders. Their whole interview process is the people that have the potential to be servant leaders. But I asked him a question, what do you think the number one personal characteristic is of a servant leader? And first of all, you guys both answer that question first. So like key ingredient, we're making pasta sauce. Obviously tomatoes the number one ingredient. Mm-hmm. So servant leadership, what's the most important characteristic?
Caring about your employees.
I was gonna say like drive, desire to do whatever whatever the goal is.
Serving the people you lead, right? That's
Well, he did say it in one word.
yeah.
Love. He goes, they have a love in their heart for themselves, for other people. That's and not everybody just, has that. So I thought, that's pretty
Interesting.
intense.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you Google this guy, it's like every single lawsuit. Well, find out who their general counsel is, and that was his name.
I'm
every
trying
single
to find
lawsuit,
out
because
right
when
now.
I Googled his name, it was like, burned my mouth on this. I mean, every lawsuit had his name on it, and I'm like, how do you be so happy? And he just goes, because I just love myself too much to get in the gutter. Anyway, so that was a big takeaway that I just came like, love. Only a small percent of people can be servant leadership. Interesting. Love is the core foundation of servant leadership. Interesting. So those were a couple things. And then I don't know how I got to this, but I was talking to him about what makes it such a what's your unique competitive advantage. I was trying to get him to articulate that. I'm like, I've read it's your meat supply chain management, and I had read all these different things. And he said, well, aside from the fact that we're building this servant leader culture, we're hiring people that have that, we're developing servant leadership, we're incredibly competitive, like sports, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, and if you've ever been into one of our stores, it's almost like an arena. Everybody is competing with each other and themselves. So just this kind of like gamification. It's one of the reasons, like in the mortgage business, almost like kind of gamifying success.
Mm-hmm.
But like you go into In-N-Out Burger, and next time you go in, you'll look at it differently, that they're all playing a game, and it's competitive. And so I just thought those were like two takeaways that I've always been, it's shaped me, as a leader, to because I am a servant leader. I like to think that Mortgage Coach is a servant leader organization
For sure.
that develops servant leadership in the mortgage industry, and that was cool. Those were some thoughts.
So culture, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's very, very unique. I'll think of it differently next time I go. I think
Get animal style next time
Get
you go.
animal style.
Double animal style.
is that the one that's
That's-
not on the
that's-
menu?
Yeah, it's like if you just order on the menu, that's like junior varsity. Yeah, when you go to In-N-Out, you got to order off the menu.
Yeah. Well,
I just hooked everybody up.
yeah. there you
Double
go.
animal style next time you go.
Last time I had In-N-Out, a couple times ago, it was on the way to. It was like an hour-long ride in a limousine van from the airport to, I think we were going to San Francisco for a convention, and I was sick, and we had In-N-Out Burger, and we got it to go. I was so car sick, and so whenever I think of In-N-Out Burger, I get a little.
Sorry. I'm sorry to hear that for you, bro.
I'm getting over it. I had a
Yeah,
hamburger last
man,
time.
that's unfortunate for you.
We stopped at the way to Sales Mastery.
We did,
Yeah,
and I think on the way back too.
yeah. It's a good thing.
So what do you think of the podcast? What do you think
It's
what
cool.
we're doing here?
I like your format, man. I like the way you guys just roll. I think it's going to pay a lot of dividends. You know, that's the other thing. When I started mine, I kind of mentioned all those exterior reasons, but it makes you better. You know,
Right.
like I think when you know, knowing that you had me coming in, you probably did some thinking about what we've done together, what you want to get out of this interview, and then we've done this interview. It makes you better, you know. And so I think you guys will really serve yourself with this format. I like it.
Well, good. What do you think of the museum? Do you have something to say, Ryan?
I was just going to go back to that accountability piece. I think with what you have going on right now, your Tuesday interview, Wednesday Skype, you got something going Thursday. I was on the last Tuesday interview and you were talking about something on Friday. I was multitasking because I still got to work. But you have so much going on with the business that stuff holds you accountable, especially when it's stuff
That's a
that's
good
being
point.
it's stuff that's being filmed. So if everybody expects that next
Yeah.
Tuesday Jeremy Forcier is going to be on, you can't slack off because you got a Tuesday. You're held accountable by everybody in the industry that you've promoted this to every single week.
Yeah, no,
Day in-
that's
day
a
in
good
and day
point.
out.
That's a good point. Yeah, well, it's a combination of, you know, there's some things that we've done that we've made promises that are public that we got to keep, and
That's the ultimate accountability.
yeah, you're right. And then you develop habits. So, and by the way, just to be clear, the old call it, you know, educational platform, and we literally have live education happening 2 times a day.
Yep.
So we've got a training team, but I own the Tuesday call,
Yep.
so 9:00 Pacific, and then I just made a really big commitment. Well, actually, I'm going on, I don't know, 40 weeks of this now. Every Friday at 9:00, I'm doing a call on productivity.
That's what you were talking about.
Yeah,
just the other
yeah.
day.
So that was born from I did a product with Darren Hardy called Insane Productivity with
Yep.
Mortgage Coach, which is basically his insane productivity program
Yeah.
for loan officers. And then I'm doing a mastermind every Friday. So I only owe, you know, kind of book it's Tuesday and Friday, where I guess you're right. I have to be accountable, man.
But you got your Skype going on Wednesdays.
Well, the Skype. Oh, well, no. The Skype calls, I just schedule those when I feel like there's someone that I want to interview for a
Gotcha.
lot of different reasons. I just schedule those. So it's
Okay.
not, those are not like specific times, and there's really not a promise in the marketplace. You know, it's you know, and my vision on that was I wanted to be able to do leaner content. You know, so that we had, you know, could be 5 minutes, although so far I don't think I have anything under 8 minutes, and not more than 20 minutes, and most of them are like 8 to 14 minutes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to create leaner content. I wanted to create content that was even more authentic. You know, it's like, you know, like there was no prep
No.
on our interview, and so it's like I want to interview this person for lots of different reasons. They vary. And there's very little preparation, and then our vision as a company is we're posting those on YouTube. We get a lot of value from them, and then we can also take those and edit them and turn them into. You're going to see a lot of packaged content that drives best practices that we think help loan officers be successful as servant leader mortgage coaches, and so we're gonna you know, really transparent, really raw, but then turn it into something really well packaged that we promote even more.
So that's awesome, by the way. And I can't wait to use the keyword servant leadership in this YouTube post we're going to do.
All right.
Do you do the posting to YouTube? Do you manage all that, or do you have somebody that does that for you?
Yeah, so I mean, we do have a team. I mean, I do more than I mean, I'm a pretty tech nerd guy. So, I mean, I can book my own travel faster and better than most assistants. And I'm not like our YouTube channel manager. I'm not our social manager. We've got a, you know,
Because there's a science
We've
to
got
it.
a real design team and marketing team. But I also, you know, like that Skype interview, that's the only thing that I have my team's permission to post, you know. So yeah, I'll take most of those Skype interviews and got my little technology, download it and post it, put a headline on it. Now they'll take a look at it before it gets promoted, but that's probably the only thing that I touch a lot and
So I-
manage a lot.
I just went to the screencast here, so everybody that's
Yeah.
watching this can see Cody with a funny look on his
Yeah,
face.
I'll fix that look, by the way.
But,
Yeah,
Come on, man.
can you change
Well,
that?
Yeah,
scene?
here we go. Let,
Yeah,
let me,
we
let
can
me just
change
hit
it.
play.
And by the way, that look at
Live
95 views, and we haven't even promoted it. So I mean, that was just,
That's killer.
boom, and it's been, I think, 2
yeah,
days.
so how to save time with home buyers over the weekend with Cody Steinman.
Yeah,
Boom.
and I made that up. Like the marketing team might update that headline. They may update some things before we really use that and promote it.
Yeah,
But that was uploaded by me.
that's killer. Yeah, we're just we're on the start of our journey here, and YouTube is definitely a science. I'm learning just how to get views and
Yeah.
how to manage all that. And
Yeah, I interviewed a guy by the name of Chris Smith. He's the author of a book called The Conversion Code. And I've interviewed him twice, but the first interview I did was all about social media, social marketing. He's had a podcast. You guys should check this guy out. Also, just
will.
as he's bigger in the real estate space, he owns a company called Curator. It's big in the real estate space. But I would follow him because between what he's done with social media, YouTube, I mean, he's killing it. And there's a lot you can learn as loan officers and with your project here. So I would recommend that. And actually, my Skype interview with him has been watched over 1,000 times.
wow,
And we haven't promoted it, but he's getting to be better well known.
yeah,
And he promoted it. I mean, he drove like 500 organic, no money spent. He just posted it on Facebook and drove 600-700 views.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, let me see if it's showing up there.
Yeah, I'm not.
I interviewed Todd Duncan a few weeks ago. Check that out. Sales Secrets. Again, I've interviewed Todd a lot of times.
Yep.
Great stuff.
Yeah, those are some of our kind of our bucket list people at this point. Like a Bill Hart, Jocko,
Dave Savage.
Dave. You're our first celebrity, Dave.
I'm not a celebrity, but whatever that means.
Joe Rogan at some point.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
If we can lure, he's a hunter. If we can lure him here somehow with,
Yeah. Well,
with-
you got, I
with
mean, to
what
get
we
guys
got.
like that, you got to have a platform. you know?
Absolutely.
Like, but if you have a platform and you have a large audience of folks that are learning from you and being entertained by you at the same time, it does seem like that's, in order to get the Jocko and Rogan and
It's gonna, yeah.
Gary Vanderchuk, I mean, they one, there's a lot of wisdom and reminders that you get, but they're also pretty damn entertaining.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't fit in. I don't know that the content I create is entertaining. It's just good, practical. If you want to be a best of your best mortgage professional, I think we create some pretty good content.
Well, we'd love to have all those people on the show, and hopefully someday we will. But one thing that I think a lot of people overlook is in our day-to-day interactions with other people, we are surrounded by people with very compelling, interesting stories and
It's
a lot
true.
of lessons you can learn from them.
Absolutely.
So, our theory on this show is we want to have people that have had success in one form or another.
Yeah.
And we've had people on the show like Emerson, who is going to come back on in August. I got that confirmed. He's just unhappy with where he was at with his career and life and didn't have any family or kids or anything. So at the age of 42 or 43, this last spring, he decided to sell all of his belongings, sell his house, sell his car, bought a little RV, and he was going to go be a vagabond for however many years he could make it. And so that was a really cool story. But
Yeah. That's
uh,
getting after it.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's what we want to do on this show is just have real people on and hear their stories. And I think the reason why is because Ryan and I get a lot out of listening to podcasts and just having it on in the background. A lot of criticism we get is, man, your podcasts are really long. And we do that for a reason because we're having a conversation. And after you get to a point where it really turns into a conversation and the microphones and everything go away, you really start to get to some compelling, cool stories from people.
It's true.
So,
It's true. Yeah, no, I remember when I listened to my first Jocko podcast, and it was 2 hours. I mean, it almost scared me off. I'm just like, what?
And he read a whole bunch
Yeah.
initially.
Well, my first one, I can't remember which one it was, whether it was the very first one or not. But I mean, I just saw the time, and I'm just like, what? And then literally, I spent a lot more time listening to a podcast that weekend than I expected to.
Yeah.
I listened to all, it kept me in the hunt, But I mean, that's hard to do. That is hard to do. But
to
hey,
listen to-
if people are tired of listening, they can turn it off.
Well, I mean, AM radio is still doing pretty good, and those
Yeah.
shows are usually 3 hours long, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And it's not very often I'll listen to a 3-hour podcast start to finish, but I'll listen to a chunk of it or have it on in the background, or sometimes I'll be working and I'll have a challenge or a thought, and I'll hear something in the background on a podcast. A lot of ours are motivational, and it'll inspire me to do something or give me an idea, and so I get a lot of value just having them on in the background. But
Yeah, it just made me think of this one podcast. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I just recently started listening to it. Is it called? The Faster Than Normal podcast.
Is it very short?
Yeah, everything is like 20 to 26 minutes. Anyways, it's kind of interesting though, because the guy who does the podcast is ADD, and he's interviewing ADD executives. And so you guys can kind of figure why I like that one so much.
And it's called, what is it called?
It's called Faster Than Normal podcast. Faster Than Normal podcast.
here's the screencast.
Yeah. But so that's one of my new ones.
So why ADD and ADHD are good for you?
Yeah, right, right. But yeah, he it's funny. He interviewed a couple people from the mortgage space. I was trying to see. It's like the CEO of DocuSign
Oh, really?
is ADD, and he interviewed him. It was pretty cool. I think that's the one that kind of got me into this. Is he interviews CEOs and leaders that are ADD and just talk about the challenges and the positives of that gift.
Is creativity one of the positives?
I mean, I can only talk from a personal experience, but yeah, I mean, I think definitely, I think we've all got like these superpowers, like every human being, and especially I think when you look at the most successful human beings, they've got some superpowers, and usually there's a line between superpower and super flaw. But yeah, creativity is definitely, I think comes from ADD, but I know it's one of my superpowers. But it's also something that, if not managed properly, can really take me down a lot of poor execution, and chasing going down rabbit holes that don't deliver the kind of results you want. So it's a mixed bag.
What's
So-
the book we just did?
Strength Finders
Strength
2.0.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they talk about how your strengths can be your weaknesses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just had a consultant come in our office and spend a day with us teaching Strength Finders. It was
It's a good
Big
it's a
eye-opener.
good book. I've been through that process.
all right. So we're about ready to wrap up,
Sounds good.
but I want to hear a failure, right? Because it seems when I talk to successful people, everyone wants to know their successes, but a lot of the success is driven from the many failures we had. And I'll start. So Strength Finders 2.0. We were really excited to have her on, that consultant. One, because she's amazing, and two, because I think Strength Finders is a good way to get recognition on YouTube and get views and get people to discover us because they're searching for Strength Finders on YouTube, right? So we sat down, had a 2-hour podcast, really, really good. And then when I got home to edit it, one of the microphone cables wasn't plugged in. And so we got 0.
Yep, 0.
And I was pretty upset. But from that, we learned a lot. We grew from it. So that's one tiny little failure with a podcast that's a month old. So let's hear some of your failures.
Well, you know how many interviews I've done? Well, there's another one.
Failure number 2.
Failure number 2. So, by the way, I have done that one many a times. In fact, literally a couple weeks ago, I went up. I had some different videos I needed to create for my marketing team, and I even had a partner that I had a promise to. And my daughter and I went up to my office to record videos, and we did all the videos, most of them like multiple times. And the kind of speaker I had a little booster on it that needed to be turned on with a battery, and it wasn't turned on. And we did an hour's worth of videos where, I mean, like, I was going at it. I mean, we were really stoked. We were like, yeah.
Like stuff you can't
She's like,
recreate.
Dad,
right?
you killed it. You know, I'm like, I know, that was awesome. And click, we didn't have the speaker on. So there's my failure. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sure you got bigger.
It's a true story. I mean, I'll just go like biggest business challenge. So it was, I don't know. I don't remember if it was 1999 or 2000, but do you remember how long you guys been in the business?
04 for me.
05.
So it's a little late. So you don't remember First Plus, and do you remember Dan Marino commercials for
Yeah.
First Plus?
I don't.
No.
Anyway, you remember like the 125s when you could borrow up to 125%
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your loan. So I had gone from, Savage Team, probably had 100 loan officers, closing hundreds of loans a month, big company, probably $250,000 a month direct marketing budget. And I was bulletproof, man. I mean, I was making a lot of money, killing it, cocky. I just go on with the exuberance and the confidence that I had. And anyways, the 125s got slaughtered. First Plus went bankrupt. Anybody that's hearing this, and you were around in those days, you know what's up.
And what he means by 125 is borrowing.
You could borrow up to 125% of the equity in your home.
yeah, which is scary.
You know,
It's scary to think
with
about.
with a pulse. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, it was the meltdown before the meltdown, and I still remember, like, I heard they went bankrupt. I heard all this, but I'm just like, when the going gets tough get going, and then people that I had been trying to recruit were getting laid off at other companies. So like, everybody else is laying people off, and I'm like, I can get that guy, get her. I'm adding people, thinking like, aren't I the smart one? And anyways, flash forward 6+ months, my partner and I lost a lot of money. Went from making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in profits to losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, lost a small fortune. And it was really, it just came down to, I was not a good businessman. I was a good mortgage guy, but I was not a businessman. And I wasn't seeing reality. I had kind of like had a picture of how I saw things, but they weren't reality. And by the way, there was enough indications of what reality was that it was just, one, I learned how to be a businessman. I should have laid people off. I should have made big changes to the company. There was a 6 month to 1 year period where, it just was not a good thing financially, and it was a real failure, business-wise, and failure. Didn't go bankrupt, didn't, have that type of story to really put a cherry on it, but it was just a really brutal time, and
It was a brutal time
that was
for
a
everybody.
business failure. Well, remember, this is not the meltdown. This is like
This is
1999, 2000, the year that the 125s went away and First
So
Plus
did that
became.
did that affect your decision making when we had the meltdown in 06, 07?
I mean, I definitely grew as a business person, and I think in a positive way, because when we were going through the meltdown, I had to lay off people at Mortgage Coach 3 different times, and I probably, the old Dave would have taken 6 months to do what I did in 1 month, or what I did in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It absolutely served me as a businessman when we went through the real meltdown. I mean, but that was so humbling and so drastic, and but yeah, I definitely played that differently as a result of the failure 7 years earlier.
Well, Dave, I want you to know that you've had a big impact on our business. I'm definitely kind of been accused of walking commercial for Mortgage Coach, but I've been using it for since 2010 for 7 years. And I can tell you that all my clients are definitely those homeowners that you're touching with that software. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being on the podcast. How can people who don't know about Mortgage Coach, how can they get some information, where can they sign up?
Yeah. So first of all, if you're just a home buyer or a realtor, we're building tools and products for families direct. So you can just go to Mortgage Coach. You go to our Facebook page. For any mortgage professionals, go to mortgagecoach.com, sign up for a demo, and we would love to bring you on our team. But I think as you see Mortgage Coach evolve over the next year, we didn't talk a lot about that, but building our brand with realtors, building our brand with families so that they're saying, I want to work with a mortgage coach. Realtors are saying, why aren't you a mortgage coach? Why don't my families get a total cost analysis? That is where the puck is going. Flash forward a year from now. Don't want to say we'll be a household name, but we will be a well-known brand in the real estate space, and we will be a much more well-known brand to customers that are purchasing and buying homes.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. And when you get close to those goals and you start hitting those, I want you to come back on the show if you'd be willing to.
That'd be fun.
So,
That'd be fun. Hey, hopefully become a household name, and then while I'm well known in the mortgage space, Mortgage Coach is even more well known in the general public.
yeah,
That would be a goal.
I think it will be.
That's awesome.
I think it will be for sure. All right, Dave. Brian, anything else?
No, thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Love what you're doing.
See you next time.